So welcome to another episode of the Mortgage Business Mastery podcast. And in today's episode, we are actually going to be breaking down in depth the personal brand Accelerator program. So this is actually an 8-step program. It's an 8-step program that I have done over the years, to be honest with you. My goal is very simple. It's by the end of the program, you'll have a crystal clear roadmap to establish your personal brand. You'll not only develop a comprehensive personal brand portfolio, but you'll also gain access to effective tools and strategies that are going to empower you to distinguish yourself as the premier, the go-to mortgage broker in your local market. That is the ultimate goal for this program. Now, to give people insight as to what this program is, and we're not covering it all in this one episode, by the way. This is going to be the next 8 episodes. It's all going to be broken down in this format, okay? And to give people context of what we're going to be covering, it's actually a lot. So they are as follows. We've got the first module, which we're going to be doing today, is Personal Branding 101. Then we've got the brand ecosystem, which is going to be the second episode. Third episode is going to be positioning yourself correctly. Fourth episode is your digital identity. Fifth episode is content creation. Sixth episode is content marketing specifically. Seventh episode is optimizing your brand. And eighth episode is engagement and outreach. So the whole goal of this next few episodes is going to be to give you the tools that you need and the information you need in order to start to build your own personal brand. Now, this is the first episode of going to be a new change in this show. So anyone who's watching this now, the show is going to be moved, as you say, to a weekly show, and it's going to be very visual. There's tons of slides. So if you're watching this, great. If you're not watching this, you're listening to us, go and click on the link in the show notes if you want to see the slides, you want to see the extra information. I actually have the module structure here. So the module structure we're going to go through is I'm going to talk about the concept at the beginning of every episode. Then I'm going to talk about the practical application. And then I'm going to assign homework. That's right. Homework. We are going homework that deep. That's how much of a change we're doing with the episode. We're doing homework because, and so the things I would be working on and what I would say if I was going to listen to the next episode. And so that's what I want to do for you. Now, the reason I want to do this, I just think that there's just more practicality for this. Actually is this specific course, this specific program we're going to go through is the first program I wrote and took the first lot of my clients through. Some of them being Carla Edwards, the protection parent that you will know. They went through this exact program nearly 5 years ago. So this exact program, obviously it's been changed and morphed over the years, but it no longer has any, it's not used in my day-to-day life anymore. And so I wanted to share it on the show as the first one we share. So let's dive into the very first module, which is Personal Branding 101. So the first thing we need to understand before we go any further in this episode is what is personal branding, okay? Because personal branding is something that's thrown around a lot. Now, for me, I define personal branding as reputation management. Literally, that is all I say personal branding is. I don't think it needs to be anything else more than that. Now, you hear people often talk about it saying it's like add value, it's being authentic, all this stuff, by the way, which for mortgage brokers, all that stuff, it can make you feel, especially if you're from a numbers background, it can make you feel a little bit like, what's the point? And so it's not actually a thing that is, it's not actually all that stuff. It effectively is reputation management. Now, the thing I do want to address in this episode is why is personal branding so important for mortgage brokers and in today's society. Now, for mortgage brokers, you need to have a personal brand because you are the product. And I think that this specific concept is often so lost. I think that and I actually had a discussion with someone recently about this. They were saying that they were like, what's the difference between me and a bank? And it was like, actually, massive difference. It's you're the USP. You are the unique selling point as a mortgage broker. And so personal branding is the thing that's going to make people choose you over your competitors, over a bank, over a building society. That is what will happen. And yet the amount of people that can't grasp that is mad. So if you're able to truly define your personal brand, understand how you're going to then amplify that and push that to the world, you will win over competitors who aren't. It's really that simple. And then if you want to then sell your business or expand your business or grow, you can build and compound on top of that as you go along. Thomas Honor is a great guy. He is really good at this. And he's built Thomas Honor Mortgage Services as a business where he built it compounded on a personal brand at the beginning. So it's very possible, very doable. So please do not think you don't need it. Now let's share and talk about the personal brand core principles, because personal branding is built of core principles and they do exist. So branding, the core principles of it is creativity, consistency, and clarity. But in my opinion, we do it clarity, consistency, creativity. Let's do it that way because that's the easiest way to do it. Now, why is clear content marketing, why is clear branding so important? With the average attention span of just 8 seconds, it's crucial to quickly and effectively communicate what you do to your ideal client. Now, if you lack clarity, they may turn to your mortgage competitors who present their message more clearly, even if they're not as qualified as you. Now, I'm sure you have had that happen to you many times, and usually, and we'll go, oh, it's because I didn't charge it, because they didn't charge a fee and I did, or we'll tell ourselves that, but that's not true. The real reality is it's probably that you're not clear enough. If they haven't even considered you, this is a big issue. This can be actually very apparent if you've ever had friends or family members who need a mortgage, don't refer you. That's because they just don't really know that you do it. And yes, they might know you do mortgages, they might know that you do that job, but they don't actually remember. And this is why clarity of message across your branding, across your digital platforms, across your online and offline platforms, that is so important. You have to be clear. Because if it's not clear, you're not going to make any money. Let's have a look at the next one. So the next one we had was consistency, which is why is a consistent content marketing or consistent branding so important? It takes on average 8 to 10 online interactions before a potential client will consider buying from you. That is why it's crucial to be consistent with your marketing and branding efforts. Why is consistency so important? You need to be consistent at delivering this message because, like I said, 8 to 10. Now, let's throw social media into the mix because this is where social media becomes a little bit of a minefield. Now, social media, on average, let's say you have 100 followers. You'll have more than that, I'm sure, but let's say you have 100. Social media normally, let's take Facebook, will normally show around 5% of your followers, your content, roughly, give or take. The numbers change here and there, but they're around 5%. So let's say that you have 100 followers, only 5 of those followers are going to see the content you post at any given time organically. And that's why you have to pay in order to get in front of more people. If it takes 8 to 10 interactions for somebody to want to buy from you, that specific person needs to see you 8 to 10 times within the buying cycle of a mortgage, which is within those 6-month period, within their 2 and 5 year fixed rate. Whole other thing I'm sure I'll unpack as we go through not so much in this modules, in this course, in this program, but we will in future episodes, in different things, we'll talk about buying cycles. But because it's all about personal branding at the moment, to be able to hit them with that, the chances of the same 5% seeing it over and over again, if you're doing weekly, is like 0. It's like so low because it's going to be churning them out all the time. So we need to do more. That's why we have to upload consistently, because consistently, if we're doing, let's say 7 a week, like 7 posts a week, Monday to Sunday, then we're increasing the odds of people seeing us. And the more people see us, the better it's going to be. Okay, so that's why consistency is so important. And the third one we have is creativity. Now, why is creativity so important? To truly stand out from your competitors and establish yourself as an individual in your field, which you want to do as your brand and as a personal brand, you need to showcase your creativity. Now, creativity amplifies the other 2 foundations we've just said, so such as the clarity and consistency. Now, when all 3 of these are in alignment, you're going to become an unstoppable force in your target markets. If you're creative, it's going to be more memorable. Okay, that's the main thing. It's memorable. Now, creativity doesn't mean quality in regards to production. It doesn't mean you have to have a super crazy, like what I have in this studio, all of these different things. It doesn't mean that. What it means is you need to be able to have a way of standing out and showing your personality and getting that across. That's what it means. It's very important to distinguish those 2 things because people get caught up buying all the gear. You don't need all of that. All you need is to be able to establish and distinguish the differences between what it is, or who you are versus your competitors. Now let's talk about the common mistake mortgage brokers make. Now, many mortgage brokers often make this common mistake of striving to be different or unique. This desire may initially stem from the genuine intentions and good intentions. It ultimately is driven by ego. It's the main thing that we're looking at. Now, by placing your needs as a broker at the forefront, that's what you're doing here. Brokers then tend to prioritize creativity as the primary focus, which often leads to failure. On the other hand, by prioritizing clarity as the first pillar, brokers can effectively communicate to their ideal clients what they do, who they help, And this approach then places the client's needs at the center of the marketing strategy, and over time it'll yield a more sustainable result. So let's unpack it. You can see it on the screen here if you're watching. If you're listening, click on the link if you want to see it. If not, I'll guide you through. Now, let's talk about this. The vast majority of people, what I'm saying here, focus on creativity first. What they do is they go, it's all about being creative. And as I've said, it comes from this thing of, I want to be different. And what I wrote down on that slide is what I've said is that by wanting to be different, you think that's going to make you more like profit and more business, but it's not. Because if you're too different, you're not clear. And also if you're different, the goal, the actual genesis of the idea, the root of that idea, the root of your desire to be known is to be known because you want to be known, which means that you're not trying to help people, you're trying to boost your ego. Very important to understand, by the way, because if we don't understand this, the whole path and the journey of personal branding and content marketing and digital marketing and social media and business owning in general, is it like fraught with danger? It's bad. It's a bad thing, and yet so easily navigated when you understand that flipping on its head is the right way to do. Most people come in, they focus about their creativity first. They might be a bit consistent. They might say, oh, okay, I might do a bit of consistency, and then they very rarely ever become clear at what they do. This is always really common. And like I said, the words that I hear all the time for this is, I want to be different, I want to be unique, I want to stand out. It's crazy. Whereas actually the right way to do it is to focus on clarity. If you focus on clarity first and you focus on getting a really clear message about what it is, who it is you're trying to help, what you're trying to do, why you do your job effectively, then you get really consistent at delivering that clear message. And then once you've got really clear and really consistent at it, you then start to add a creative twist and a creative spin on that very clear and consistent message. You are now a powerhouse. There is going to be nobody else out there that can even come close to what you can do here. Honestly, it's massive. And yet, very few people do that. In fact, so much so that you could actually just be clear and consistent and don't even have to worry about creativity. And by doing that, you'll still smash it. You'll still smash it. So you don't have to be doing all this crazy stuff. And yet we all do it. We all do it. And so to understand these are the core principles of personal branding, if you want to be successful with your personal brand, you have to stop thinking, as a broker specifically, you want to stop thinking about, I want to be different, I want to stand out. You're not trying to be different, you're just trying to be the most clear and the most consistent of your competitors. If you can do that, you're going to win. It's as simple as that. People don't need to watch you and think, what do I do? What is it about? We need to go, oh, it's mortgages. Yeah, it makes sense. Clear, win the business. Do that. Creativity, you can focus on that once you're later on down the line and you've been clear and consistent for 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, a year. So that's understanding the concepts. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about, like I said, is the practical application of this stuff. So I'm going to set your homework in a minute at the end of this. Obviously, set your homework. I'm not going to set your homework. You do what you want. It's a podcast. But I'm going to tell you what I would do when I would be working with people, what I would advise you would do. But we're going to talk about the practical application of this. And the practical application is understanding what is your story, okay? We need to know the story of your brand. So important. And when it comes to story, there are a number of things we can actually talk about with this. Now, people think the story is their life story, especially when it comes to personal branding. It's not something you really need to be massively over obsessed with. Your story effectively needs to be, and the best way to describe it is the mirror in which you show the world yourself. And so it's a mirror that you show to the world in which the client can see themselves back in it. Sounds very philosophical, but that genuinely is what it is. It's the mirror through which the client can see themselves in. So your story should be your business story. This is your personal brand story. And it shouldn't be, I was in the industry for 25 years. It's none of that. That is a terrible thing to do. Instead, your story is really simple to craft. And that's what we're going to talk about right now. Your story should answer these 3 questions. So your story should answer the following questions. So the question 1 should be, what annoys you? Question 2 should be, what upsets you? And question 3 should be, how can you fix it? Now, what's really interesting is we're going to talk about, as I said, really deep, the target So of who you're facing, each one. So each one of those questions is we're going to talk about the target of who you're trying to face and the emotion that you're trying to get across. And then I'm also going to give you an example of mine, or an old example of mine. This is not as much now, but this is the old example that was used when I wrote these modules many years ago. And I thought I'll keep them in because they're good to show and good to see, because this is Ash writing this 5 years from recording this, which made me laugh. So let's talk about what annoys you. So the first thing with what annoys you we need to focus on is that the target we have for this is the competition. So what annoys you about the competition? What annoys you about other brokers? What annoys you about corporate brokers? What annoys you about mortgage advisors in a bank? What annoys you about comparison sites? That's the emotion we're looking at. The emotion we're going after here is frustration. It's very important to identify the two of these. Target is competitor, emotion is frustration. This is the things you should be feeling in the words you're using to describe it. Now, what I want you to do when you do this is you'll be writing down 3 things that annoy you. Write them out on a piece of paper, write them in a notebook, whatever you want to do. And these things are: competitor is the target, frustration is the emotion. And I'm going to show you, and I'll read you my example. And it's 3 of them. You need 3 things. So my example is when people, what annoys me. Number 1 is when people use intangible language around personal branding, such as authentic or add value, as it has no practical application. The second one was when people who have been successful in their own personal brand do not share their true methods and pretend it's simple. And the third one is when people push the importance of vanity metrics, follows, shares over actual value, effectively meaning impact and income. So that is the example. That is my specific example. Now, what you'll be able to see here is this is what when you write this down, this is what you want to do. You actually should be able to see when you're on the screen if you're watching this, and if you listen to this, like I said, feel free to jump over or I'll explain. The language here is all around not attacking, but chastising the competitors. It's all around these things. Now, what's really important with these is that the goal for this is, again, remember the mirror that you're doing. If you're listening to this and you ever felt annoyed when people use words like authentic and add value, but you don't really know what they mean, then that's a tick for you. If you ever feel like people are out there selling you courses and selling you programs that you actually think they don't do any of that, they're just selling it to make money, that's the second one. And then the third one is when do you feel like people are always talking about, look at the reviews, look at the likes, look at the comments, but actually you don't know what people are making or if this is actually turning into anything. If you have seen yourself in any of those things, then this will resonate with you. And if this story is being used in my content, which by the way is similar, it's the same story still. How many times have I gone through already in this episode said add value, be authentic, these things. So if that's the type of stuff that's bothering you and bugging you, and you see yourself in there, then it's big. If you're watching this on YouTube, let me know in the comments if you see yourself in any of those. If you're listening to this, then you can drop me a message and say on Instagram, just Ash Paul, and say, yeah, Ash, I saw myself in those too. But this is an interesting concept because this is how you start writing your story. Not once have I said, I've worked the job for 7 years. So that's the first one. Now let's talk about the second one. The second one being what upsets you. Now the target for this one is now the client. So remember, the target for annoys you was the competitor. The target is now the client. And the emotion we're now going for is compassion. And this is who we are trying to talk about when we talk about upsets. So I want you to do the same type of thing, but you'll sit down and you'll write down these 3 things. Shall we have a look at mine? So what upsets me? Number 1, when I see coaches, consultants and freelancers, now this would normally be, now I'd rebrand this for this, when I see mortgage brokers, insurance advisors who have great ability but are losing business due to poor visibility and incorrect positioning. That's number 1. Number 2 is people with brokers with little knowledge on content creation avoid it because they feel like it is too hard for them. Number 3 is when I see brokers hide their personality because they feel it is not professional to show it and they might lose clients. Now you can see with this, mirror, this is the story, the mirror to the client. Do you see yourself in that situation. Again, not once have I said, look how long I've been in the industry, look how many business I did. No one cares about any of those things. But what they do care about is how you make them feel. Remembering this, that you are they are the hero in the story, not you. You are the Yoda. You are the person who's guiding them through, but you are not the hero. And I think that's really important. Again, what I would say with this, if you've ever had any of those things, if you feel like you've ever, you feel like you are good, but you're just losing ability due to your positioning being wrong, which, by the way, I know this is what the majority, none of this stuff is so still relevant. It's completely relevant. It's still my core underpinning of what I do. And I'm talking about that in a minute, but this is so important because it never changes. But if people say this stuff to me every single day in messages, in discovery calls, in coaching calls. I hear this stuff every day. Now let's talk about the next one, which is how you can fix it. We don't have targets and emotions. How you fix it follows a very simple structure, which is effectively bullet point 1 should be what your service is. So it's what you offer. Bullet point 2 should be your values. So more about you and your kind of freedom and what it is that you value and what it is that you believe. Freedom of expression is what I'm trying to say. And then number 3 is your free content. I'm going to show you my example now. I'm going to read it to you, and then I'm going to explain the thought process behind it. Spoiler alert, we're about to go through the method over the next 8 episodes. But this is like I said. So created a tangible step-by-step personal branding method that focuses on content marketing, social selling, and behavioral psychology, which allowed them to position themselves as the expert in their industry, which has allowed anyone to position themselves as the expert in their industry. Service, that's number 1. That's my service. Number 2, we're now into values, okay? I live by example by sharing my stories, both highs and lows, and allow people to see that you can create a business around your personality. Very much do this. If you've ever followed me on social media, you'll know I share a lot of personal stuff. And if you haven't already checked out my Simplifying Success podcast, which is my personal podcast, you can go over there and watch it. I literally share everything I'm going through, what I'm thinking about, my business highs, my business lows, my mindset around things, frameworks about stuff. That's that place, and that's my authentic place, and that just is there for that. So I practice what I preach. And you can still see, by the way, 5 years on, this stuff is super relevant. And it's why I've been able to be successful, because I still follow this like religiously to the T. And then the final one, which is the free service, we have, so produce free, high quality show that is a resource for people who might not be able to afford me one-to-one, so I can still spread the message of personal branding. This one, you couldn't literally make it better. I've literally rebranded and restructured this specific podcast to be able to give you the best possible resources out there, because for people who can't afford me, because my waiting list is so long and I can only work with a certain amount of people, and it's about like when I work with them, that's about accountability and structure and bespoke coaching. I'm literally giving you stuff that people would pay thousands for in courses and group coaching programs. But I've even given you the thing that I was going to do the top one at this point. Now, let's break this down and let me explain this in a little bit more detail. Very simple. If you think about, you've just spent 6 points allowing the client to see themselves in the mirror of what your problem is. You've effectively got them riled up. You've got them to the point where they're literally like, if they've said yes to all 6 of those, which is like a tick chart. So if it's, do you feel this? Yes. Do you feel this? Yes. Do you feel this? Yes. Are you annoyed by these? Yes. These 3? Yes. Are you upset by these 3 things? Yes. If that's the case, that client, if they've got the budget, will buy your stuff. So if they feel the same way about all those things and you've done it correctly and you're presenting this correctly, then what will happen, by the way, it's also important, this is not just a pitch, this is about you understanding your story, that solves the person who is a hot lead. The kind of the middle bit is not so much fluff, but it is fluff at the same time. And this is more about just you and demonstrating your own personality, which is where that kind of authenticity part will come in. But you can see we've got 1 bullet point out of 9 is that. And then the final one is the free stuff. And the idea should be, you've gone through the 6, and then it's okay, if I'm ready to buy, I'm ready to buy. If I'm not ready to buy, then here's a little bit more you can learn about me. And then here's a free thing that you can go to and you can jump into this until you are inevitably ready to come back and buy again. So this could be a free first time buyer guide. It could be a podcast you do. It could be follow me on one of my clients, Anish does it really well. Follow me on social media, or I do constant updates. However you structure this, you structure it to the point where it keeps people in a loop. So it's about, this becomes effectively the funnel. And I said there, if you tie this all together into a structure, then it becomes a bit of a monster. So let me do a example for you. We're going to go through this and do this. So if I'm going to use the prompts on screen right now. I'm going to use the prompts on screen as the way to guide my story. So if you're talking to a client or someone says, hey, how did you get into business? This is what I would say. Actually, my story is a bit of a funny one. Got into this industry because I would constantly see people using intangible language around personal branding. Words like authentic, add value, had no application. It would really drive me mad. I'd also see a lot of people who were successful, a lot of coaches, consultants, they were successful in their own right, but then they were selling and pretending that it was simple, but then they weren't telling people the things they were actually doing themselves, which is just infuriating. And then I'd see people always brag about how many views they had and likes they had and followers they had, but no one ever talked about what the actual bottom line would be and whether or not they made any money from it. And that is so misleading that it makes me very angry. Now, the problem with this is it would upset me to my core, because the people who lost were the advisors. They were the advisors who lost. I'd often see people, mortgage brokers, insurance advisors, they had really great ability. They've been done it a lot of years, but they were losing business because their poor visibility or incorrect positioning, most likely online, because they didn't have the skills to be able to do it. They didn't have the knowledge around that content marketing, digital marketing, content creation. So they'd avoid it because they thought they couldn't do it. It's too hard for them. And honestly, this would break my heart to see that. And then the worst ones of all, to be completely honest, is people who are willing to hide, that would hide their personality, pretending to be something they're not, because they thought they might lose clients, which is the opposite, to be honest, of what would actually happen, because they thought that maybe that people would say they were not professional. And I'd see that, and I think that had been beaten into them from their corporate days or from old school ways of thinking, and it just doesn't have to be the case. I saw this in the industry and I thought, I can see and moan about it, or I can make a difference. And so I decided to create a step-by-step tangible personal brand method that focuses on content marketing, social selling, and behavioral psychology, which allows anybody to position themselves as the expert in their industry, no matter their level or skill. It also, I wanted to make sure that I would live by example. I was going to share all my stories, the highs, the lows, the ins and outs, so people would like you. And two, that the stuff I was teaching people is the stuff I use myself. And I'm never going to sell them something that I wasn't doing myself. And then the final thing I decided was, I realized that I'm not going to be able to help everybody, because at the end of the day, my time is limited. And also some people's budgets at this point are not there. So instead of making them go and buy some £1,000 crappy course, I'm going to make tons of free content and resources so they have the ability to be able to learn and get to the point where either they need me, or in some cases they use all my free content and they never need to see me again. That is how I got into the industry. That's my story, and that's what I do in a nutshell. Not once did I say, I've been working in financial services for 25 years, blah, blah, blah. I didn't say that. And I guarantee you, a lot of you listening there will go, in fact, I know 90% of the people listening to this will go, I resonated with all of that. And I know that because you'll be on my waiting list. And the reason I'm saying that about your story is that nailing that down first is going to dictate everything else we do. Because your story as a personal brand is what you live and die by. It affects your content, it affects your narrative. It is the clarity that we're speaking about. That's the clarity. And so without that clarity, we will not do well. Now, that's a very long-winded thing. It's something to look at doing, but there is another thing you can do with this, which is what I refer to as the personal brand statement. Now, the personal brand statement is effectively the elevator pitch. It is, how do you condense that story, and how do you condense it and put it into something that is smaller and concise. So let's say you're at a BNI meeting and you say, hey, who are you? This is your personal brand statement. Let's say you're on your LinkedIn profile or your Facebook profile or your website and you say, tell me about what I do. This is it. So we want to look at the personal brand statement. I'm going to break it down for you now. This is this small statement. So the story is the 9 bullet points. The personal brand statement is about taking those 9 bullet points and putting them into some form of short 1-minute statement. Now, what do we need to do? I say this stuff is practical, guys, very practical. We're taking this to a whole nother level. I'm very excited. So let's talk about the personal brand statement. So the things we need to have, it is in 4 structures. We are answering the question, what do you do? Why do you do it? How do you do it? What are the benefits? So this follows the Simon Sinek what, how, why structure, which is start with why. If you haven't read that book, you really should. It's brilliant. But we're adding what do you do at the beginning of it, because what do you do is important to establish the clarity of what you do before we start talking about the why. I think that, personally, in my opinion, is where I think Simon Sinek's thing can go a little bit wrong, is we need a little bit of what before we go to the why. Otherwise, the why can be led with a lot of like fluff and people don't understand the context. Everything is broken down in depth in this stuff. So I'm loving this. I'm already fired up and enjoying it. So this is the example of a personal brand statement in action. I'm going to read it quickly to you, and then I'm going to break it down into the sections. So and again, this is old, remember, so it's out of date. My name is Ash Borland. I'm a personal brand coach, speaker, and podcaster. I help businesses and individuals stand out from the crowd by building, shaping, and refining their personal brands. My theory is that everyone is individual. We all are our own unique selling points. When we start to embrace our own individuality and use it in a focused way, we become more memorable, unstoppable, and irreplaceable. I work on a one-to-one basis with you around personal brand discovery, social influence, and social media strategy. The benefits of building a strong personal brand include establishing your credibility online, growing a network which will attract new opportunities, and increasing leads and ultimately sales without chasing them. Very short, very sweet. Now let's break it down. As you can see on the screen, the what section, if you're listening to this, if you're watching it, if you're listening to it, you can click it. But the what section is, my name is Ash Borland. I'm a personal brand coach and speaker, podcaster. I help businesses and individuals stand up from the crowd by building, shaping, and refining their personal brand. So it's who I help and what I help them do. So I help individuals, businesses and individuals, which really is, I help mortgage brokers. If I was to do this now, it's, my name is Ash Borland. I'm a marketing and sales coach. I help mortgage brokers and financial professionals stand up from the crowd by building, shaping, and refining their brand identities. Kind of, because I also do sales coaching and business coaching. It's evolved since I did this. See, it's very clinical and very to the point. The second bit we have is the why. So the why is just one sentence. My theory is that everyone is individual and we are all our unique selling point. I got it right that time. And we start to embrace our own individuality and use it in a focused way, we become memorable, unstoppable, and irreplaceable. So I'm using, if you look at the why, it's a lot more, it's not really fluff, but it's a lot more like talking about emotion. So what, very matter of fact, who I am, what I do. Why is why I do it, and we're using more emotive language, emotional language, memorable, unstoppable, irreplaceable, embrace, individuality. The how is straightforward. It's just one sentence. It's what you do. Literally, it is how you do it. I work on a one-to-one basis. That's it, around personal brand discovery, influence, and social media strategy. I still only do one-to-one. And as of this date, I have no plans, any immediate plans anyway, to do anything other than one-to-one, because I love doing one-to-one. So that is the structure there. Really straightforward. You don't need to do, I'll help you, guide you through step by step. It's just what do you do? Boom. So as a mortgage broker, I guide you through, I hold your hand. If you're a hand-holding service or you're done for, you are done with you. We do identify that. We'll talk about that in a future episode. Then you just, this is what you do. And then the what, so that's the how you actually do the job. And then the what is the benefits of building a strong personal brand include, and we break this into 3 bullet points. The benefits of having a mortgage broker include, bang, list them in a list. It's important. Make it in a numerical order. My name is Ash Borland. I'm a personal brand coach, speaker, and podcaster. I help businesses and individuals stand out from the crowd by building, shaping, and refining their personal brands. The benefits of building a strong personal brand include establishing credibility online, growing your network, which will attract new opportunities, and increase leads and ultimately sales without chasing them. So what happens is that statement allows people, if they want to learn more about you, they can listen to the whole thing. But actually, most people are going to remember what you do and remember what the benefits are to them. This is why it's so important to do the story first. Because if you just do this, you'll go, I'm a mortgage broker, I did X, Y, and Z, and you'll never get across the right type of emotion. It just won't happen. Yet, when you break those 9 points down, and those 9 points will be used in other things as well, but in this specific structure, they will be used to effectively infuse it into the statement. Now, they'll also be used, before we dive into kind of the homework, so to speak, but they'll also be used for you as your content. The story structure, not the statement. The statement's used as like on things. It's like the public facing version, but the story content will be used in everything you do. If you ever watch any of my content, I refer to those 6 points specifically, and actually those 9, because I talk about my values and my service and my free stuff. I refer to those 9 points pretty much in every single episode of a podcast or every single interview I do. Anything I do, I will refer to those points, because that's just the sheet I need to speak from. It's the script. I don't have to talk about anything else. I can just refer within to that and use it and turn. If I know it, I'm going to be able to do it. If I don't know it, I'm not going to be able to dictate it and put it out there. Let's talk a little bit about the homework. I love a bit of homework. If you are listening to this and you would like to take action on this, then my actions to you would be answer those 3 questions. What annoys you? What upsets you? How can you fix it? Answer those 3 questions. Define them for yourself, and then take it and create that personal brand statement and write them down. Save these in the same place. Create a personal brand profile where you save these things in. If you do this, you're going to use them time and time again. If you do them, and this is what I think to you, if you do these and you're writing them, please, it would mean the world to me if you take a screenshot while on your computer, whatever it is, while you're writing it, and tag me in it at Ash Borland on Instagram, and I will love to see those. It would mean the world to me. That is the first module of the Personal Brand Accelerator program. I'm really excited to dive into this more with you. It gets real technical as we go through. It's very straight. It's very good. And I'm loving and I'm excited actually to share it with you. And that's because I've reached a level in my own career, my own success, where I'm like, I'm going to give it all. I'm going to give it all. I love that. And I think I'm so happy to share it with you. The next one we're going to be doing, next session, is going to be the brand ecosystem. We're going to go deep into the brand ecosystem. I've done many episodes on it in the past, but we're going to go into the 5 brand ecosystems and how they work and why you need to know what they do, as well as some things you can do yourself in order to make it even better. So make sure you tune in to that one, because we are going to crush it. You're going to love it. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.